They say every photograph tells a story. When I look back at ours, framed wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, the holiday cards we mailed to friends, I see what everyone else saw. Two people in love, a picture-perfect marriage. Claire's smile, radiant and flawless, could disarm even the coldest heart, and mine, standing beside her, eager and proud, made us look like the couple everyone envied. But photographs don't capture the silences. They don't record the moments when the air between us felt heavy, when her eyes lingered too long in judgment, or when I swallowed words I should have spoken. Behind every smile there was a pause, a shadow, something I couldn't name then, but would one day understand too well. I used to believe marriage was about trust, about surrendering yourself to someone who promised to protect that vulnerability. But with Claire, I learned how easy it was to mistake control for care. It started small. She'd rearrange things I set down, insisting she knew a better place for them. My favorite mug disappeared for weeks, only to reappear after I'd stopped asking about it. She'd correct the way I folded laundry. With that soft laugh of hers, "You're hopeless. Let me do it." I'd laugh back, thinking it harmless. But looking back, I realized those little corrections weren't harmless. They were lessons teaching me that my way wasn't enough. One night, sitting at the dinner table, I noticed the way she tilted her head when I spoke about work. I thought I was telling a harmless story about a difficult client, but she interrupted with a smile so sweet, it could rot your teeth. "Darling, you always overcomplicate things," she said, reaching across to touch my hand. "No wonder you come home exhausted." Her words stung, though I didn't let it show. I laughed, nodded, agreed with her. It was easier to believe she was right than to admit the knot forming in my chest was real. Friends envied us. They told me I'd won the lottery with a wife like Claire. Smart, beautiful, charming. She had a way of dazzling people, of pulling them into her orbit. And I admit, I was proud of that. Proud to stand beside her at parties, proud to call her mine. But when the parties ended and the doors closed, the shine dulled. There were nights when her silence cut deeper than any argument. I'd lie awake beside her, watching the rise and fall of her chest, feeling as though I was next to a stranger. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd smile in the dark, whispering, "Nothing, love. Go to sleep." It should have comforted me, that smile. Instead, it haunted me, because I couldn't shake the feeling that she was smiling at something I couldn't see. I buried those doubts. What else was I supposed to do? Every marriage has its cracks, I told myself. But even then, in those early days, I sensed something lurking beneath the surface, a weight pressing against the walls of our perfect life, waiting for the right moment to break through. If I had trusted my instincts then, maybe things would have ended differently. Maybe I wouldn't be here, telling this story like a cautionary tale. But at the time, I convinced myself everything was fine, because that's what Claire was best at, convincing. Convincing me that the shadows were in my head, that the tension in the air was just me being paranoid. Her smile, her touch, her laugh, each one a carefully placed mask, and I wore one too. The mask of a happy husband, proud and unshaken. Looking back now, I see it for what it was. The beginning of a game I didn't even know I was playing. A game where every move mattered, and losing meant more than just heartbreak. It meant losing myself. It didn't happen all at once. The shift was subtle, like hairline fractures spreading across a pane of glass, barely visible at first, then impossible to ignore. Our arguments began with the smallest things. I'd misplaced the car keys, swear I left them on the counter. Claire would smile, tilt her head, and say, "You're so forgetful. I already told you I put them in the drawer." I'd stand there, certain I hadn't heard her say that, but her confidence was disarming. Eventually, I stopped arguing. Another night, I came home late from work, drained and aching for quiet. The table was set, candles flickering, food plated with her signature perfection, but the moment I sat down, I saw her expression falter. "You didn't notice," she said flatly. "Notice what?" Her lips curled into something that looked like a smile but wasn't. "I cut my hair 2 inches. You don't care enough to see me." I scanned her face, her shoulders, desperately searching for the change. Maybe the light played tricks on me, but I couldn't tell. Still, I apologized, fumbling over words, ashamed for missing something so obvious. That night, she turned her back to me in bed, silent. her breath sharp and steady until I whispered I was sorry again and again. The next morning, she was radiant, humming as she made coffee. When I asked if we were okay, she laughed. Of course we are, silly. Don't be dramatic. That was Claire's gift, making me question whether the tension I felt was real. Weeks passed and I noticed myself shrinking. Every conversation, every glance carried the risk of being wrong, of being accused of not listening, not caring, not remembering. And each time I bent, I let her version of events override mine. One evening, I found a receipt in her coat pocket, an expensive restaurant I'd never been to, dated 2 nights earlier when she'd told me she was at yoga. My stomach knotted. I held the slip of paper out to her when she walked into the kitchen. "What's this?" I asked. She barely glanced at it. "You must have dropped it in there. You're always so careless." "No, it was in your—" Her voice rose, sharp enough to cut. "Are you accusing me of lying?" "Do you hear yourself?" I froze, the words caught in my throat. Her eyes brimmed with tears, and suddenly I felt like the villain. She grabbed the receipt from my hand, tore it into pieces and let them fall like confetti between us. Then, with a trembling voice, she whispered, "I can't believe you don't trust me." I wrapped my arms around her, murmuring apologies I didn't even believe, while inside something hollowed out. The cracks were widening, but I couldn't name them for what they were. Gaslighting, manipulation, control. At the time, all I knew was the growing fog in my mind, the uneasy feeling that I couldn't trust myself. Friends noticed changes in me. At a dinner gathering, a close friend asked if everything was okay. I brushed it off, forced a laugh, told him I was just stressed with work. Claire sat beside me, hand on my knee, smiling sweetly as if she were my anchor, not the storm pulling me under. Later that night, when I mentioned the comment, she leaned close and whispered, "Careful what you say. People might start thinking you're unstable." It was framed as concern, but the warning beneath her words chilled me. I wish I could say I fought back then, that I saw the truth. But I didn't. I convinced myself every marriage had rough patches, that love meant patience, compromise, sacrifice. But love should never feel like walking barefoot on broken glass. And still, I stayed, because I believed the lies she told me, and worse, the lies I told myself. It started with the simplest detail, one that seemed so insignificant at first that I almost ignored it. A door, a plain white-painted door at the end of the upstairs hallway. Every time I walked past it, it was locked. At first, I assumed it was just a storage space. Every house has one. Boxes of old junk, maybe holiday decorations or sentimental things she didn't want to part with. But it nagged at me, because in a house that was supposed to be ours, that door belonged only to her. Whenever I casually mentioned it, she brushed it off. "Oh, that's just where I keep some private things," she'd say with a smile, sliding her hand into mine as if the topic didn't matter. Private things. In a marriage where we shared everything from finances to toothbrush holders, why a locked door? The thought haunted me. One afternoon, while she was out shopping, I stood before it. I touched the brass knob, cool against my palm, and tried it gently. Locked as always. I crouched down, peering at the keyhole, but all I saw was darkness. The silence of the house pressed in. My heart pounded, irrationally loud in my chest, as if I were the one trespassing. But wasn't this my home too? That was the first moment I felt like a stranger in my own house. When she returned later, I tried to bring it up. "Why do you always keep that room locked?" She froze mid-step, her shopping bags dangling from her arm. Then her face softened into a practiced smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. "You're overthinking again." "It's nothing." "Nothing?" I pressed, more sharply than I meant to. She tilted her head, walked over, and before I could react, she wrapped her arms around my neck, kissing me with sudden urgency. Her lips silenced the question, her hands tugging me toward the bedroom, and like a fool I let her. Because in that moment, intimacy felt easier than conflict. But lying awake later, I realized what had happened. She hadn't answered me. She had deflected. And I had fallen for it. Over the next weeks, the door became an obsession. I timed how often she disappeared into the room, how quickly she locked it behind her. Sometimes I'd hear faint movements from inside, like drawers opening or papers shuffling. But the moment I walked closer, silence. Am I imagining this? I whispered to myself one night, standing in the darkened hallway. My hand hovered near the knob. My reflection in the glass picture frame opposite me looked tense, suspicious. A man losing his grip. She noticed my unease. "You've been so tense lately," she said one evening at dinner, her fork hovering over her plate. "You need to relax. Trust me." Trust, that word stung. Because what kind of wife needs to remind her husband to trust her? One night I tried something bold. While she was in the shower, I searched her jewelry box. Her drawers, anywhere she might keep the key. Nothing. She had hidden it well. I remember staring at myself in the bathroom mirror afterward, sweat clinging to my forehead. What was happening to me? Why was I sneaking around like a criminal in my own home? But deep down, I already knew the answer. Because she had secrets, and secrets rot marriages from the inside out. And then came the breaking point. It was late, past midnight, when I woke to the sound of the locked door opening. My eyes snapped open. I listened, soft footsteps, careful and deliberate. She was moving things, whispering under her breath. I climbed out of bed, moving silently down the hall. My pulse thundered in my ears as I neared the door. I saw the faintest line of light glowing beneath it. I raised my hand to knock, hesitated, and then froze when I heard it. A voice. Low, muffled, impossible to make out, but undeniably not hers. My breath caught. Someone else was in that room. And that's when everything I thought I knew about my marriage began to unravel. I always thought I knew her, my wife, my partner, the woman who promised me forever. Yet lately I've been realizing how little of her I actually understood. The cracks had started to show. Arguments, her locked door, the silences that stretched like razor wire between us. But nothing prepared me for the day her past came knocking. It was a Saturday afternoon. She said she had errands to run. Left me at the cafe near our house with a distracted smile and a promise to be back in an hour. I sat there sipping my coffee, trying to drown out the restless thoughts about that locked room upstairs. That was when someone tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me," a warm, tentative voice said. I turned. A man about our age stood there, holding his cup. He had the kind of face you recognize even if you've never met. Open, easy, trustworthy. He introduced himself. "Daniel. I went to school with Claire." My stomach tightened. Claire never mentioned Daniel. She never mentioned any close friends from her childhood, come to think of it. "You're her husband, right?" he asked with a smile. "I recognized you from her photos online." I nodded. "Yeah, I'm Michael." Daniel sat across from me uninvited, though I didn't protest. Something about him felt disarming. And then, without warning, he began to talk about her. Claire was complicated, he said, stirring his coffee. Brilliant but secretive. Always hiding things. You never really knew which version of her you were getting. One day she'd be laughing and charming. The next, she'd vanish for days with no explanation. I frowned. "Vanish?" He nodded, lowering his voice. "She told us stories, wild ones, about family tragedies, abusive relatives, illnesses. But then later, you'd hear her tell the same story again with the details completely different. It was hard to know what to believe. I felt the blood drain from my face. The woman I married was the queen of consistency, or so I thought. She always had an explanation, a smooth answer ready as if her life had been neatly rehearsed. Daniel chuckled softly, unaware of the storm inside me. She once claimed her father was dead. I went to a school event the next week and met him. She brushed it off like it was nothing. "That's Claire," I forced to laugh, but my throat was dry. "Maybe she just had her reasons." Daniel tilted his head, studying me. "Maybe, but if you're married to her, be careful. Claire could charm anyone. She was magnetic. But she also had a way of rewriting the truth, making you question what you saw, what you remembered. I saw her do it to teachers, friends, even her own family." The words slammed into me. Questioning what you saw, what you remembered. That was my life with her. Our fights where she convinced me I misheard her. Our conversations where she insisted I forgot things. The nights I lay awake wondering if I was losing my mind. Before I could respond, Claire returned. She froze at the sight of Daniel sitting across from me. For the first time in years, I saw a crack in her perfect smile. "Daniel," she said, voice clipped. "It's been a long time." "Yeah," he replied evenly. "Just catching up with your husband. You never mentioned him." She slid her hand onto my shoulder, squeezing tighter than necessary. "We should go," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Daniel gave me a sympathetic look. Nice meeting you, Michael. Take care. The ride home was silent. Claire's grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled. When I finally asked about Daniel, she laughed. A brittle, hollow sound. Oh, him? He's always been jealous. Don't listen to a word he says. But her eyes betrayed something else. Something cold. Something I couldn't name. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Daniel's words echoed in my head, refusing to leave. For the first time, I wondered if the woman I married wasn't who she claimed to be at all. And the locked door down the hall seemed more dangerous than ever. The silence in our house had become its own kind of violence. Every word between us was either sharp or forced, every smile a mask stretched too tight. After running into Daniel, I couldn't stop replaying his warnings. His words had burrowed deep into me, gnawing at everything I thought I knew about Claire. One evening I was cleaning out the drawer in our study. A drawer Claire usually ignored. Old receipts, loose change, scraps of paper. That's when I saw it. A crumpled sheet, half tucked between magazines. At first I thought it was just another old bill. But when I smoothed it out, my blood turned to ice. It was a flyer, a missing person flyer. A woman's face stared back at me, grainy and slightly faded. She looked young, maybe in her early 20s, her smile faint but kind. The text underneath was clear. Missing since 2009. Last seen in Connecticut, family still searching. My heart pounded in my ears because the woman in the flyer looked eerily familiar. I rushed upstairs, pulled out the old photo album Claire kept hidden in the back of our closet. She always claimed it was just childhood memories. I flipped through quickly, my hands shaking, and there it was. A photo of Claire at some gathering, her arm wrapped tightly around the very same girl. The resemblance was undeniable. Same face, same eyes. My breath caught. I shoved the album back into place before Claire returned. The walls felt like they were closing in. That night at dinner, I tried to act normal. She smiled across the table, but the curve of her lips looked rehearsed. "You're quiet," she said, twirling pasta on her fork. "Just tired," I muttered, though my mind was racing. Her eyes lingered on me too long, as if she sensed something shifting. Later, as she showered, I crept back to the study. I couldn't stop staring at the flyer. I ran my thumb across the woman's printed smile. Who was she? What was her connection? To Claire? Why was the flyer hidden, not thrown away? My thoughts spun out of control. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Claire just happened to know someone who went missing years ago. But then why hide it? Why keep it buried? The shower turned off upstairs. I shoved the flyer deep into my pocket and slipped back to the couch before she could notice. When she entered the room, her hair damp, wearing that same silk robe she always used to disarm me, she sat down beside me and leaned against my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she whispered. My body went rigid. If she knew what I'd found, if she guessed what was in my pocket, would she smile the same way? Or would she snap that mask in half? I kissed the top of her head and forced a chuckle. Work stuff, nothing important. But everything about that moment felt dangerous. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed the missing woman's face, the way her eyes mirrored the photos I'd seen with Claire. The bed felt like a trap. Her breathing beside me was steady, almost too steady. I realized then the air in our marriage had changed. It wasn't just tense anymore. It was perilous. Every word, every glance carried the weight of secrets, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending I didn't see them. By morning, I knew one thing. I couldn't ignore the flyer. Whatever truth it held, I had to find out. Even if it meant opening the locked door she never wanted me near. The flyer haunted me. I carried it in my pocket for days, feeling the edges press against my skin like a reminder that my questions were no longer harmless. Something dark lingered in this house, and the locked door held its answers. One night, when Claire claimed she'd be out running errands, I felt the pull of that door stronger than ever. My pulse hammered as I stood in the hallway, staring at the brass knob. For years I respected her boundary, but after the missing woman's face, after Daniel's warnings, after the growing fractures in her stories, I couldn't wait any longer. The lock was old, a firm twist of a screwdriver, and the mechanism gave way with a hollow click. My chest tightened. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, damp, metallic, faintly sour. My stomach twisted. The room was small, barely lit by a sliver of moonlight sneaking through the blinds. But as my eyes adjusted, the shadows sharpened into shapes. Blood. Dark stains soaked into the wooden floorboards, smeared as though something or someone had been dragged across. I froze, bile rising in my throat. Chains bolted into the wall caught the moonlight, glinting cold. Rusted but unmistakably used. On the far side of the room, shelves lined with boxes leaned crookedly. Curiosity and terror wrestled in me as I stepped closer. I pulled open the nearest box. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Faces of strangers, all women. Some smiling. Some candid, some blurred as though taken without permission. And there, in one photograph, was the woman from the flyer, her eyes alive, her arm slung casually around Claire's shoulder. My knees weakened. I gripped the shelf to stay upright. My wife, my Claire, was tied to something I couldn't even put into words. The air felt thinner, harder to breathe. I stumbled back, my boot scraping against the floorboard. The sound echoed too loudly. That's when I heard it, the faint creak of the staircase. I spun, my heart slamming into my ribs. She wasn't supposed to be home yet. Her footsteps grew closer, unhurried, steady. I panicked. The photograph slipped from my trembling hands, scattering across the floor like shattered glass. I backed toward the chains, trapped in the very room I'd invaded. The door opened, and there she was. Claire stepped inside, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. A grocery bag dangled loosely from her wrist, but her eyes fixed on me. Not surprised, not angry, just watching. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. My breathing was ragged, hers controlled. Finally, she tilted her head. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said softly, her tone almost tender, as if comforting me after a nightmare. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my throat constricted. All that came out was a broken whisper. "What is this, Claire? What have you done?" She set the grocery bag gently on the floor, then closed the door behind her with deliberate slowness. The lock clicked back into place, sealing us inside together. Her eyes flicked to the photographs at my feet. She crouched, picked one up, and traced the woman's face with her finger. She was beautiful, wasn't she? I staggered backward until the chains pressed against my spine. My entire body trembled. "You're sick," I managed, though my voice cracked. Claire stood, sliding the photo into her pocket. Her smile was faint, but her eyes were cold. "No, I'm careful in ways you'll never understand." The calmness in her voice terrified me more than any scream could have. It was as if she had rehearsed this confrontation, as if my discovery was inevitable. I realized, in that moment, that I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was her witness, and witnesses didn't always live long. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. Claire simply leaned against the door, arms crossed, studying me like I was the one on trial. The room smelled of rust and blood, the silence stretching until I thought I would suffocate. "You look pale," she finally said, her voice steady, almost soothing. "Sit down before you faint." I shook my head, backing away, but the chains clinking against my shoulder betrayed how trapped I felt. "Claire." "What is this?" I whispered. My throat was dry, words scraping out like sandpaper. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "The truth," she said simply. Then she moved further into the room, stepping over the scattered photographs as though they were nothing but dust. "You think you married an angel? A wife who bakes pies and kisses you goodnight?" She tilted her head. "That's the mask. What you see here, that's survival." I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Survival doesn't look like this." I gestured toward the stains, the chains, the chilling evidence. Her eyes darkened. "You don't know what was done to me, what men took from me. What they thought they could keep taking. Her voice cracked for the first time, but there were no tears, only a sharp edge of fury. Do you think women walk away from abuse untouched? Do you think it doesn't leave marks? I wanted to believe her. God help me, a part of me did believe her. But the photographs, the missing woman, the locked room, none of it fit the narrative of a victim merely fighting for survival. Claire, I said, my voice trembling, this isn't justice. This is something else. She stepped closer, her shadow swallowing mine. Justice doesn't exist for people like me. For women like me. So I created my own. Tell me, does that make me evil? Or does it make me strong? Her words twisted inside my head, filling me with confusion, guilt, dread. My stomach churned as she crouched, picking up another photograph. She held it out to me. Look at her. Do you know what she did to me? Do you know how many nights I lay awake, replaying what she allowed to happen? Her tone was sharp now, every syllable deliberate. I stared at the image, but I didn't know the woman's story. I didn't even know if Claire's words were truth or manipulation. I don't understand, I stammered. That's because you never asked, she snapped. Then, almost instantly, her tone softened, her face shifting into something gentle, vulnerable. But you could understand. If you stay with me, if you trust me, if you keep this between us. Her ability to pivot, rage to softness, menace to warmth, made my skin crawl. It was a game. One I hadn't realized I'd been playing since the day we met. Claire, I said, my voice cracking, if you loved me, you wouldn't put me in this position? She laughed quietly, low and bitter. Oh, love. That word again. Love is just another chain. You want to leave? Go ahead, but if you do... Her smile faded into something darker. You'll never be safe. Because if I go down, I'm not going down alone. My chest tightened. She wasn't just confessing. She was binding me to her with invisible threads. Threads of guilt, fear, and a twisted intimacy I couldn't untangle. I realized then what she wanted. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but complicity. Choose, she whispered, stepping so close I could feel her breath. Stand with me or against me. The photographs on the floor seemed to burn holes into my vision. My pulse hammered, torn between the loyalty of a husband and the morality of a man. And in that moment, as her eyes locked onto mine, I knew I couldn't stay in limbo forever. The morning after Claire's so-called confession, the house felt different. Every corner carried a weight. Every sound seemed amplified. I sat at the kitchen table, staring into a coffee cup gone cold, my mind replaying her words. Stand with me, or against me. The knock at the door nearly made me spill the mug. 3 sharp raps, firm and deliberate. Claire looked up from the sink, drying her hands. She didn't seem startled. If anything, there was a flicker of anticipation in her eyes. I opened the door to a man in a gray suit. He had the kind of presence that made silence heavy. His badge glinted briefly as he introduced himself. Detective Harris, he said. May I come in? My throat tightened. Claire stepped forward smoothly, smiling with that same calm mask she wore so well. Of course, Detective. Coffee? He nodded politely and followed us inside, his gaze scanning the living room with the precision of a scalpel. I noticed how his eyes lingered on the family photographs, on the locked hallway door that I now knew too much about. I won't take much of your time, Harris began, pulling a small notebook from his coat pocket. There have been several missing persons cases in this area. I'm speaking to everyone in the neighborhood. His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. They seemed to dig, to peel away facades. Claire laughed lightly. Oh dear, that sounds dreadful. But surely you don't think we would know anything about that. I tried to steady my breathing, but my palms were damp. Harris noticed. His gaze shifted from her to me, narrowing slightly. And you, sir? You've lived here how long? 2 years, I croaked. We moved in after the wedding. Beautiful home, he said, though I couldn't help but notice something odd. His head tilted toward the locked hallway. That door always locked? Claire didn't flinch. Storage, she said smoothly, her smile unwavering. You know how it is. Boxes, clutter, things you'd rather not look at. The lie slid off her tongue like silk, and I hated how convincing she sounded. Harris scribbled something into his notebook, though his expression gave nothing away. I wanted to speak, to scream even, but my voice betrayed me. Silence wrapped around my throat like a noose. If I said a word, Claire would know I'd chosen a side. And Harris. Harris would tear my life apart. Claire reached across the table, her hand brushing mine, soft and deliberate. A warning disguised as affection. I forced a smile I didn't feel. Harris closed his notebook and stood. Thank you for your time. I may have more questions later. His eyes lingered on me for a fraction too long, as if he could smell the truth on my skin. Then he tipped his hat and left. The door clicked shut. My breath rushed out, shaky and uneven. You handled that well, Claire murmured, moving behind me to rest her hands on my shoulders. Her touch was both tender and suffocating. But next time, don't look so nervous. He'll notice. I wanted to shove her away, to demand answers, to run into the street and confess everything. Instead, I sat frozen, trapped by the very silence she fed on. Because she was right. My silence had already made me complicit. And once you've crossed that line, there's no easy way back. That night, as I lay awake beside her, I realized Harris wasn't the only one watching me. Claire's eyes, half-lidded and patient, glinted in the dark like knives. And I knew. The game was far from over. The night after Detective Harris left, the house became a stage and Claire, its director. Every glance, every touch, every word felt calculated, meant to remind me that I was hers, bound to her. Even when my thoughts screamed otherwise, she slid into bed beside me, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my chest. You were perfect today, she whispered. My strong husband standing by me. Her praise should have felt reassuring. Instead, it clung to my skin like oil. I could still feel Harris's eyes boring into me, the weight of unspoken truth pressing harder with every breath. You looked nervous, she added, almost playfully. Her nails grazed my ribs. But that's okay. I know how to calm your nerves. Before I could protest, her lips were on mine, urgent, demanding. It wasn't passion, it was possession. Every kiss, every touch was a reminder that resistance meant punishment, while surrender meant temporary peace. Later, as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, she curled against me, whispering like a lullaby. We're in this together, always. If you betray me, you betray us. You betray love. The word love twisted in my chest like a blade. I had once believed in it, trusted it, built a life around it. Now it was a weapon, sharpened and wielded by the very person who claimed to protect it. The next morning, Claire brewed my coffee as if nothing was wrong. She kissed my cheek sweetly, then whispered, Remember, silence keeps us safe. One wrong word and we both burn. It was a threat disguised as devotion. A vow sealed not with rings but with chains. Days bled into weeks. My life narrowed into a suffocating routine. Pretending for the neighbors, lying to colleagues, avoiding Detective Harris's questions whenever he circled back to our street. At home, Claire pulled me deeper into her orbit, lavishing me with affection one moment, slicing me with icy glares the next. You need me, she would murmur, brushing her lips against my ear. You'd fall apart without me, and part of me believed it. That was the sickest truth. I was addicted to her darkness, the pull of her dominance, the thrill of her confessions, the fear that kept my heart racing. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, terrified to fall, yet unable to step back. One evening she drew me into the locked room again. The chains glinted under the low light, the stains on the floorboards darker than before. She wrapped her arm around my waist and whispered, This is ours, our secret. This is what binds us closer than any marriage vows ever could. I wanted to scream, to shove her away, to run, but my body betrayed me. I stood still, trembling, nodding like a man under hypnosis. Good, she purred, pressing her lips against my cheek. Because if I ever lose you, I'll lose everything. And I don't let go of what's mine. That night, I dreamt of fire consuming the house, of chains tightening around my wrists, of Claire's smile hovering over me like a specter. When I woke, her hand was already on my chest, her eyes watching me in the gray dawn. What's wrong, love? She asked softly. Bad dream? Don't worry, you'll never leave me. Her voice was gentle, but her grip was iron. And I realized marriage had become the cage, and Claire the warden. I wasn't just living with her darkness anymore. I was a prisoner of it. But deep inside, a thought began to stir. Prisoners sometimes escape. After weeks of enduring her suffocating grip, I thought I had grown numb to Claire's darkness. But numbness has a limit, and mine shattered the night I stumbled across her plan. It was late. Claire had gone upstairs, humming to herself after pouring 2 glasses of wine. She left her phone on the counter, something she rarely did. Normally it was locked away, glued to her hand or turned face down. That night, temptation gnawed at me until I finally reached for it. The screen lit up with a string of messages. My breath caught when I saw the name, Ethan, my younger brother. I opened the thread, Claire. He trusts me. He'll be easy. Claire, one night is all I need. He won't say a word. Claire, Mark will never know. My stomach dropped. My brother, sweet, trusting Ethan, the only family member who still believed in me, was her next target. I felt my knees buckle as I read further. She wasn't just planning to seduce him. She was laying a trap. She wanted leverage, insurance, another chain to bind me. Anger surged through me, hot and uncontainable. For the first time, her darkness didn't just frighten me. It made me sick. When she returned to the kitchen, she caught me staring at the phone. For a moment, her mask slipped. Then she smiled, slow and venomous. So, she said, setting the wine down, you finally know. Why him? My voice cracked. He's my brother, Claire. He's done nothing to you. She tilted her head, studying me like a cat studying a trapped bird. Exactly. That's why he's perfect. If he falls, you'll fall harder. If he bends, you'll break. Don't you see? This isn't about him. It's about you. The rage in me trembled against the fear. You're sick, she laughed, low and bitter. No, love. I'm smart. People betray. People leave. But if I tie you to me with something you can't undo, you'll never leave. Not for him. Not for anyone. I stepped back, shaking. For the first time, I didn't see a manipulator. I saw a predator. A woman who would burn anyone. Family, friends, strangers, just to keep her grip on me. That realization broke something inside me. Until then, I had convinced myself I could endure, that silence was safer than confrontation. But now, if I stayed silent, Ethan would pay the price. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, listening to her steady breathing, wondering how many others had fallen into her traps before me. How many would follow if I didn't stop her? Her words from earlier echoed in my head. This isn't about him. It's about you, she was right. It was about me, about what kind of man I was willing to be. And for the first time, I knew I couldn't stay her prisoner any longer. The breaking point had come. I didn't know how yet. But I would fight back, even if it meant destroying both of us. The night I decided to fight back, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. For days I carried the weight of her words, her threats, her laughter, and Ethan's name carved like a wound inside my chest. I knew if I didn't act, my brother would be next. So I did the unthinkable. I betrayed her. It happened quietly, in the stillness of early morning. Claire was asleep upstairs, tangled in the sheets, while I slipped out with her phone and a bundle of photographs I had found in the locked room. The images still burned in my mind, faces frozen in fear, stains on the floor, chains rusting in shadows, proof, real proof. I drove to the station with my heart hammering, half convinced she would appear in the passenger seat, smiling that cold smile. But she didn't. It was just me, the wheel, and the sound of my pulse. Detective Harris met me in his office. His eyes, sharp and searching, locked onto mine. "You're ready to talk?" he asked. I slid the phone and photos across his desk. "She won't stop," I whispered. "You need to end this, before she takes someone else." For a long moment he studied the evidence without speaking. Then he nodded. "You did the right thing, but this won't be easy. She's clever, dangerous. I know," I said. My voice cracked. "She's my wife." When I returned home, I expected silence. Instead, the house hummed with tension, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Claire stood in the living room waiting, her eyes locked on mine, and I knew. She already knew. "You went to him," she said softly, almost tenderly. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I froze. "Claire?" Her expression twisted, the tenderness dissolving into fury. "After everything we've shared, after everything I gave you, you think you can betray me and walk away?" I tried to steady my voice. "It's over. They'll stop you." Her laugh was jagged, broken glass. "Stop me? Oh, darling, if I burn, I'll take you with me." Before I could react, she struck a match. I saw the flame dance in her eyes, reflected like madness. She tossed it into the pile of curtains, and in seconds, fire swallowed the fabric, roaring upward. "Claire!" I lunged forward, trying to smother it, but she shoved me back. The fire spread with terrifying speed. Floorboards snapping, smoke clawing at my throat. She stood in the chaos, arms outstretched, her face lit by orange and red. "If our vows meant anything," she shouted over the crackling blaze, "then we'll leave this world together. Husband and wife, till death do us part." I coughed, blinded by smoke, heart pounding. The heat seared my skin, but I couldn't stop staring at her. She looked almost triumphant, as if destruction was her final gift. And in that moment, I understood. Claire would rather see everything reduced to ash than admit defeat. As the fire roared higher, I stumbled toward the door, torn between escape and the sick gravity of her madness. One choice, 1 second, life or death. The betrayal of vows had reached its end. The fire changed everything. I still hear the sound of the walls caving in, beams cracking, and Claire's voice rising above it all, half scream, half laugh. By the time I staggered out into the night air, smoke filling my lungs, she was gone. Whether the flames swallowed her, or whether she chose that final escape, I'll never really know. The detectives pulled me out, coughing, barely conscious. The house was nothing but embers by dawn. Neighbors gathered, whispering, their eyes sharp with judgment. They didn't see the chains, the blood, the faces in the photographs. To them, it was just a fire, just a tragedy. But I knew the truth. And the truth was unbearable. Claire's body was never recovered. Some said she burned. Others whispered she fled through the woods and disappeared into the night. Detective Harris told me the evidence I'd given was enough to tie her to the missing. Enough to open the files. Enough to connect the dots. But with her gone, justice became a ghost. Always near, never grasped. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. Nights stretched into endless reels of memory. Her smile across a dinner table. Her voice in the dark telling me she loved me. The warmth of her hand in mine before it all twisted into control, manipulation, terror. Was any of it real? Or had she been lying from the very beginning, wearing love like a mask? I asked myself that every morning. The reporters came, of course. They wanted the headline, "Husband of a Monster." They wanted a clean story, a cautionary tale. But there is nothing clean about this. There is no closure, only fragments of a life burned down to ash. Detective Harris called it the worst case he'd ever touched. He told me I was lucky to survive. Lucky. I laugh when I think of that word, because survival feels nothing like luck. It feels like punishment. I walk through the world now as though behind glass. I watch couples in cafes, husbands and wives in grocery stores, families laughing in parks, and I feel nothing but suspicion. How much of what we see is real? How much is hidden? How many locked doors exist in the homes around us? Secrets waiting to bleed through the cracks. I don't trust smiles anymore. I don't trust vows and love. Love feels like the cruelest trick of all. A promise that can turn into a prison, a weapon, a fire. Claire took more than lives. She took faith. She took the fragile thread that ties one human being to another. And without it, everything feels darker. Sometimes late at night, I swear I hear her. A whisper in the smoke, a shadow in the corner of the room. As if she isn't gone, not really. As if she's waiting. Maybe that's what scares me most. Not that humanity is lost, but that monsters like her are still out there, wearing the faces of people we love. And once you've seen behind the mask, you can never look at humanity the same way again.